from the chest, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by. So as you guys know, we do have the World Championship, or maybe you might know. We got the World Championship going on right now, and it is the Rapid and Blitz World Championship. So I went ahead and took a side step and figured I'd grab one of those games, out of that. So this is round number 3, and this is Nodirbek Abdusattorov versus SL Narayanan from India. So it's a pretty nice game, if I say so myself, man. So, of course, all my people coming from the Philippines, I will say Maraming Salamat. Anybody who is coming from Uzbekistan, I will say Rahmat. Anybody who is coming from Kerala section of India who speaks Malayalam, I will say Valade Nandi. I just learned that word. I knew Nandi before, but I just learned. I want to say thank you very much. So I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But if you guys are ready to go, man, let's take a look, see what we got for this game. All right, so we got the move D4, one of the bests. We do see knight to F6. We got C4. We got E6. Knight goes to C3, and this does invite the Nimzo Indian defense. And we actually see that on the board. And then white loses. No, I'm playing. White doesn't lose, bro. It is very, very sharp. But is definitely playable by both sides. We do see the move E3, and we are really actually not worried about bishop taking C3 here because, pawn will be taking back, and you guys see that we have this gigantic lump of pawns in the center of the board, and we will be able to just develop like supernaturally, so we're good to go. We got castles up by black. We do see bishop going to D3. All very, very standard stuff. As you guys notice, white has... even though they don't have this e-pawn right here, they still have a pretty nice center, position command in the center of the board. So black definitely needs to chip away at that somehow. And we actually see Narayanan go the move D5. Very, very standard reply to these types of positions. We do see pawn taking D5, pawn taking D5. So Abdusattorov decides, he's like, hey, man, you know what? Like, I see this tension in the middle of the board. I really don't want my bishop to be inconvenienced with a pawn takes C4. So he just goes ahead and clarifies everything in the center of the board. We do see knight going to E2, nicely just tucking itself behind this bishop on D3. We do see rook over to E8. We got castles. You got to get out of the center of the board, homie. The board is not actually open right now, but just as a good general practice, you definitely always want to try to get your king into safety. We do see the move A5, and A5 might seem random, but explaining it, black has castled on the king side. So definitely you want to try to start gaining some space on the queen side with some moves here. Also on a more subtle tip, you did want to play the move knight to A6, which is what we actually see in the game after bishop to D2 and knight to A6. And now, upon knight to A6, we are not worried about bishop taking A6 because then the rook takes back on A6. If you did not move A5 before that, you would be looking at really, really ugly pawns if white wanted to do that to you. So it's a rhyme and a reason. We do see rook over to C1, getting on that half open file. The bishop does drop back to F8. And you guys see these ideas like usually like in Berlin's, where you'll see like a rook to E1 and then the bishop is able to escape back to F1. That's one of the definite main lines. We're just getting the bishop out of the way of this knight, possibly wanting to plop down into the B4 square. We do see the move F3, and this is a two-purpose move. Number one, you really don't want black to improve this knight at all. Also, one of the thematic pawn pushes is going to be trying to go E4, so we have now just prepared that. We do see the move C5 because black is not going to sit around and just do nothing, homie. Like, man, I'm just going to help you do your thing. No. Black is noticing what white is trying to do, and this is definitely a very good move to try to, like, disrupt this solidity. If that's even a word, solidity, the solidness of white's pawn structure here in the center. We got king going over to H1, and that is the novelty of the game. Not that it's a bad move, but it's just the first time that we've seen it. I'm not 100% sure why king to H1 is absolutely necessary. You really don't have a bishop bearing down on this diagonal or a queen. So, yeah, anyways. We do see the move B6. We got A3. And now this is basically just, ruling any of these B4, knight to B4 situations completely dead. So now you kind of have to do something with your knight. So that is why we see the knight going to C7. It was a little oddly placed on A6. It's somewhat oddly placed on C7, but maybe it could find a home in the center of the board somewhere, or maybe on E6. We do see knight going to F4, just improving our knight just a little bit. We got bishop to A6. And the little unfortunate thing about it is this bishop is pressed against this rook. So, I mean, you're going to kind of have to trade it some kind of way. So we just decided I'm going to go ahead and go bishop takes a6. And we got rook taking a6. And then we have a very subtle move, a4. Now, one of the things, like I said before, that black is definitely trying to do is they are trying to gain as much space as humanly possible over here on this queen side because, you know, their king is not over there. So definitely one of the breaks. After getting rid of that bishop on that diagonal, one of the breaks that you really kind of want to see as black. Not necessarily a break, but it's just kind of like a pawn storm type situation that you do want to start kind of rolling these pawns forward. Maybe you can create a passed pawn over here. So in light of that, you do see, Nodirbek going this a4 move, and you start to see that both sides really fixate on this idea. You do see queen going to d7, really trying to reinforce that b5 idea. You do see queen to b3, and this just reinforces, making sure that we stop that because we absolutely don't want black to start gaining more space. Usually when people gain space on you, you have a very, very cramped position. They have much more maneuverability with their pieces, and you really don't. So we definitely don't want black to get that. We do see rook a to a8, and then we do see the move g4. And I mean, this move doesn't look absolutely ideal. It makes somewhat of a little bit of sense. You have moved the king out of the way of the g file, so maybe you got a rook to g1 coming, and you can start to put some pressure along this g file. Also, a detail that you want to pay attention to is the fact that this king is actually on a light square. And if you notice, black does not have a light square bishop, so it's going to be a lot harder for them to exploit your king's position on a light square. We got the move h6. You do kind of want to stop what white is doing. You definitely don't want a g5 to be rolling. At the moment, there was actually nowhere for this knight to go. So you do kind of have to be a little bit careful. You got knight c to e2, and then you have bishop to d6, and the bishop enters the party again. It really wasn't doing a whole lot on this f8 square. It was kind of, protecting this diagonal here. But, I mean, you really don't have a whole lot of pressure on that diagonal at the moment. Everything is kind of blocked up. We got queen going down to d1. We see knight going to e6. Like I said before, you want to kind of try to get this knight a little bit more back into the game. This is definitely a more dominant square for it to be on. We do see the move b3. We got pawn taking d4, pawn taking d4. And this is where that c5 move from earlier kind of highlights in the position because, like I was telling you before, black definitely wants to kind of undermine the solidity, even though I don't even think that's a word, man. Like the solid state of white's pawn structure. So you notice now that black has managed to give white an isolated pawn. We do see rook a to c8 contesting this rook on this open file. We got rook taking c8, queen taking c8. We got knight taking e6. Queen taking e6, and then we do have a nice knight to f4. And we're kind of asking the queen what it wants to do. The queen really doesn't have any way to kind of come in white's position. So you don't necessarily want to back the rook up here, or the queen up here, because you're going to be looking at rook to e1. So we do see the queen sidestepping over to d7. We got rook to e1, rook takes, queen takes. We do see queen over to c7. And ideally, you would like to try to redirect this knight somewhere. You would like to maybe plop it down onto d3 and then maybe move it up into e5. That would be a much better square. The problem is you can't actually move it at the moment because it is hitting this pawn right here. So you have to really just kind of defend it. Queen goes to e3. This does allow the queen to come down to c2. So in that exact position, a queen to c1 was actually just a little bit better. Just making sure that this queen doesn't infiltrate into your position. So you definitely don't want queens or rooks really plopping themselves down into your position. But we do see this position here. And then we do see knight going down to e2. It might kind of seem strange because you're like, why did I just back my knight up for? Well, at the end of the day, black does have a really strong eye on this pawn right here. If black can manage a bishop takes, deflecting the queen away, you would actually be winning some material. So we absolutely do not want that to be the case. So that is why we see knight to e2. Bishop goes to b4. We do see bishop taking b4, pawn taking b4. We got the move h4. We see queen down to d1 with check. We see king up to g2. We got queen to e1. We got queen to e7. And then we have an actually really, really beautiful move that Narayanan actually plays in a position. It doesn't look like it's possible, but it is the move knight down to e4. And this does now disconnect this queen from the protection of this knight. Not only that, but we are threatening some nasties right here if you allow the knight to survive. So you absolutely have to take it. You really don't have a choice. Pawn takes e4. We do throw in the move queen takes e2 with check first. The king does slide up to g3. It wasn't ideal to go down to g1, even though that is actually one of the best moves, just allowing this pawn capture. But from a human perspective, you're like, man, I don't really want my pawn to be hit, bro. So I'm going to go ahead and protect it. We do see queen going to e3 with check. The king goes down to g2. And in the game, we actually see a forcing of the trade of queens with queen taking e4 with check. But so much better was actually to capture on b3 with the queen. And the problem that white has is that their king is so wide open over here. You are going to be subject to some checks. And you really can't protect with your queen like you'd like. You can't protect every single one of these pawns with your queen, no matter where you put it. So black is going to be able to, secure themselves that much more material. And there really isn't a whole lot stopping this pawn from promoting at all. But like I said, we did see the queen trade after the queen takes e4. You got queen taking e4, you got pawn taking e4, and then you actually have the move king to g3. And this is actually a game-losing blunder by Abdusattorov if black can find the move. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to figure out what move Narayanan plays in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, so for those of you who understand endgames, you know that if you can manage to get connected in a king and pawn endgame, if you understand that if you get connected past pawns anywhere on the board, you have a very big advantage over your opponent, especially if it's really minimized. So one of the things that you should notice in the position is that you actually have connected past pawns right here on the E and F file, if not for this G3 pawn, G4 pawn. So is there a way to possibly get this pawn out of the way, deflect it, or get rid of it in some kind of way? Absolutely yes, and that move is h5. If you found h5, you would understand that if you can just clear this pawn out of the way like so, or even forcing a situation where the pawn takes and the king takes, you would have completely passed pawns on E and F file. So this was actually the killer blow that very promptly into the game. We did see Abdusattorov take on h5. Like I said, it really doesn't matter either way. You do see the move f5. So even if we look at the other variation, if you just did something else, there really wasn't a whole lot else to do. Let's say you push d5 and you did allow the capture right here. King would be capturing. You still have the ability to go this f5 move. And it is because of the nature of connected passed pawns protecting each other. As you guys know, I mean, one of the only things that you really can do is just go here, or if you want to back up. Connected passed pawns in an endgame against a king, they literally protect themselves. You know that the king can never capture this pawn because if it does, let's just throw something out there on the board. Let's just say the king moves and you go ahead and do something like this. Of course, this would be losing for black. So do not play this, but I'm just trying to illustrate what I'm talking about. If you do capture the pawn that's ahead, you would be looking at this. In a majority of situations, of course, the important detail of this is the fact that you do have a passed pawn of your own. So obviously the king would do something more like this, and then this would be completely winning. And you can't do this because this is going to be e3, and there is no way to stop this pawn now. So that is the nature of connected passed pawns versus a king. So that is the situation that Narayanan actually created when he managed to, have Nodirbek go this move here. And then he did play the move f5. And Nodirbek understands that number one, the connected passed pawns do protect each other. But then also the other major issue that you have in this position is you do not have a way to create any connected passed pawns of your own. And this king actually can just casually, very casually, walk and pick up some pawns. The black king does not have to protect these pawns at all. They protect themselves. So like I said, that leaves this king the ability to literally just walk anywhere around the board that it wants. This white king literally has to stay in this general vicinity to make sure that this pawn right here does not run to e1. So that is that. I thought it was a very interesting end game that I saw with this one. So for anybody who is coming from Uzbekistan, I will say, how do you say that? Is it Yashimzus? That's how you say, how are you? Yes, Yashimzus. How are you? I appreciate everybody. Rakamat for you. Anybody who is coming from India, I will say namaskaram to you. And Valade Nandi. And I appreciate Danyavada. Let me see. Nandri, if you are from Tamil. I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by, and I'm going to see you guys next time.